Hello there and welcome to another Lost Media video. This time we're going to have a look at the Robot Wars MTV pilot, a pilot which I briefly mentioned in my Ghost Stories video. I hope you enjoy. Robot Wars is a show that I love and one I hold dear to my heart. It's a show that I've seen every single series of and even went to see being filmed back in 2002 and 2003 respectively. Of course, it has quite a bit of history behind it, as well as several pieces of lost media that surrounds it, from the qualifiers to the recently discovered Robot Wars Revealed, an animated series, and of course at least 3 different pilots. One such lost media and the topic of this video is the MTV pilot, also known as the American Robot Wars 2000. To start off with, here is a bit of a brief history lesson to help gain an idea of how the pilot came to be. For starters, Robot Wars was founded by this man, Mark Thorpe, with the first competition starting in 1994 in San Francisco. The events had several weight categories, these being featherweight, lightweight, middleweight, and heavyweight. The idea was simple head-to-head combat with an eventual champion for the respective categories. In 1995, BBC producers got a glimpse of Robot Wars and wanted to discuss making a TV show, with the UK Open in 1995 being filmed as a pilot. However, new director of programs Alan Yen Tob didn't have an interest in Robot Wars, and the show wouldn't be picked up until 1997, with the first Wars airing in February 1998. Robot Wars ended up being a smash hit in the UK, however things were not so pretty for the Americans. Lawsuits, copyright enforcement, and controversy dominated Robot Wars' development to the point that the US Roboteers ended up clashing with a man called Steve Plotnicki. There is a lot of history about this man and his rivalry with the US teams, in particular La Machine's creators Greg Munson and Trey Roski. These 3 men butted heads multiple times, causing strife across the rise of robot combat as a competition and on television. In fact, it should be noted that in 1998, a US Robot Wars Championship was outright scrapped due to Plotnicki suing Munson and Roski, who were attempting to host the event. This was due to the Robot Wars in the UK starting. After over a year of no robot combat competitions in the US due to Plotnicki and his seemingly controlling behaviour over Robot Wars and its IP, Greg Munson and Trey Roski went on to try and go for Robot Wars in 1999, which was then renamed into BattleBots to avoid copyright infringements. BattleBots served as a US replacement for Robot Wars, with 2 events being made in 1999, the Long Beach event and the Las Vegas World Championship. Long Beach was a success, but with the Las Vegas they attempted to have a pay-per-view airing of the event, which did not gain well, gaining less than stellar viewership and reviews. That said, Roboteers from the US and even from Robot Wars itself, such as Razor, Kilohertz and Mortis, their teams had a favourable response to the US competition. So why on a Robot Wars video am I talking about BattleBots? Well, if it wasn't for Robot Wars, BattleBots wouldn't have existed, and without BattleBots there would be no MTV pilot. For you see, in 2000 BattleBots got picked up by Comedy Central and had its own TV show, which would later air in the UK on the BBC, the same platform which aired Robot Wars. This put pressure on Mentor and its producers, as now there was competition between the 2 shows. To make matters worse, the third Wars of Robot Wars was plagued with behind-the-scenes issues. For example, several on-set incidences took place, such as a robot stabbing a man in the leg, audiences cheering and clapping on the Perspex protection, causing bolts to fall out, several robots encountered faulty radio frequencies in certain spots of the arena, and there was plenty of mismanagement from production, causing many robots to be modified or untested by the time that battle begun. Several competitions were cancelled, such as the tag team, the heavyweights, the featherweights, and even an antweight competition, with one of the antweights, called Tyrant, appearing on the show at one point. One of the biggest moments, however, was when Rex Garrett of Cassius fame protested the health and safety concerns of the show, and even allegedly throwing the Pussycat fight on purpose. To make matters worse, the teams of Razor, Mortis and Kilohertz, who had just been in BattleBots, revealed they had a much better time there, despite the fact that the US had a lower budget. Simply put, Mentor needed to act, and one of the first things was to redesign the arena completely, and not only that, but to entice US Roboteers to US Robot Wars competitions, one that would discourage them from going over to BattleBots and eliminate the competition once and for all. The MTV pilot was initially advertised by MTV's press release, calling for robot builders from the US to fight it out to be crowned American Robot Wars champions. Filming took place on the 22nd and 23rd of July 2000, and would have been the first time the 4th Wars arena was filmed, and was a month before any of the Series 4 Christmas specials were filmed in fact. The arena itself would actually appear in Robot Wars in the War for Independence special, as that was filmed right around the same time that the MTV pilot was filmed. Initially, it was planned to have 8 robots competing, with each team awarded $4,000. The format was essentially like a Series 3/Series 5 heat, where there would be 4 head-to-head battles in the first round, then 2 battles in the second round, and finally a heat final. The competitors for the MTV pilot were Frenzy, Ghetto-Bot, Modular, Ramstein, Spike, the Mangulator, and Mauler. Now, you probably have noticed that there was only 7 out of 8 competitors here, and that was proved to be such an issue that the production chose the best looking robots from the batch, these being Frenzy, Spike, Mauler, and the Mangulator, with the remaining teams being forced to simply sit by and watch the matches. The first round battles were Mauler vs Spike and Frenzy vs the Mangulator. According to the official battle reports, in the Mauler vs Spike battle, Mauler span up to speed, hitting Spike multiple times and tearing off the doll head decorations, and damaging Spike heavily. However, it is unknown if Mauler won through a KO or a judge's decision. For the Frenzy vs Mangulator fight, there was very minimal information other than Frenzy completely dominating the battle and decimating Mangulator. The final between Mauler and Frenzy went as followed. At first, Frenzy smacked down on Mauler several times, dominating the fight early on. However, midway through the fight, the hammer snapped off and Mauler was able to fight back, smashing into Frenzy and tearing the armor, and beating Frenzy to win the pilot. Interestingly enough, the damage from Mauler is present on Frenzy during the War of Independence special. Before the MTV pilot was filmed, Morgan Tilford requested that Mentorn's travel coordinators give him and his brother a direct return flight to California. This return trip was vital for Tilford as he was due to sit 3 final exams at the Foothill Community College, a week after the pilot's filming. Mentorn agreed, negotiating a bulk travel deal with Continental Airlines, helping maintain the company's low budget for the pilot, and seemingly ensuring the Mauler's team would receive a return flight from Glasgow to San Jose, California. However, upon arriving at Glasgow at 10 PM, the team discovered the airport was closed. After discussing with Mentorn's travel coordinators on the issue, it was revealed that the coordinators had made a mistake in the booking flights for most of the teams. As a consequence, all Mentorn could provide was a flight to Newark, which would not take place until 2 days later, which would cause Tilford to miss some of his exams. Ultimately, the travel disaster led to a chain of events which would cause Tilford to become diagnosed with bipolar disorder and temporarily sanctioned in the Sanford Hospital's psychiatric ward. Another controversy revolved around Modular and its team captain Todd Menderhall, who felt upset and angered by the lack of proper management surrounding the missing competitor, especially given how long the journey was and not receiving any money due to not competing, feeling it was unfair. This production error, accompanied by poor management of the teams, led to many American teams see Robot Wars in a very negative light. Some teams outright vowed to never appear on the show. This unintentionally benefited BattleBots, but in turn created a separate issue. BattleBots and Robot Wars wanted to branch out through merchandise deals, and as such, new rules and quote-unquote laws were introduced to prevent robots from crossing over, hence why Frenzy never returned to Robot Wars and was replaced by The Bat, or Panic Attack never returned to BattleBots and instead replaced by Scallywag. Despite the MTV pilot never airing, the US would receive a new version of Robot Wars called Extreme Warriors, which lasted 2 seasons, with a 3rd US season in the form of the Nickelodeon Robot Wars. They'd even got a dub of the 4th Wars, all of which were, ironically enough, more successful than BattleBots. How was this, you may ask? Well, BattleBots, despite a popular competition, and popular among Roboteers, it was a complete disaster as a TV show. Dan Dannick of Team Delta put it best by saying, quote, "BattleBots was a brilliant competition, but an awful TV show." Even Robot Wars' creator and the godfather of robot combat, Mark Thorpe, absolutely despised the Comedy Central BattleBots, claiming it was overly sexualized and didn't really care much about robot combat at all. Initially, BattleBots was greatly deceived in the ratings. It was able to have success in the first season, but the second season ended up being the first nail in its coffin. For you see, the second season's first episode, called Prelude to Battle, had tricked audiences into thinking they were going to see a robot combat show. But what they got was instead 20 minutes of unfunny gags and sketches with only a single match to show. This single match was slow and boring and didn't really have much action at all. This led to a dip in viewership which continued to tumble as years passed, with the final season of Comedy Central's BattleBots barely getting 100,000 viewers each episode, which can I just tell you is absolutely abysmal in terms of ratings. The biggest reason for BattleBots being such a failure was Comedy Central itself, actively sabotaging BattleBots' chances with it preferring a staged comedy show over a robot combat competition. It seems that Comedy Central didn't really like BattleBots, and according to reports from the Gearheads book, which I totally recommend, Comedy Central's attitude to fixing the negative reception and the low viewership was to quote-unquote up the boobage by having more sexy and comedic scenes, unaware that this unnecessary filler was what was killing BattleBots. Comedy Central even went as far as to put fake audience members holding provocative signs and hiring essentially dumb bimbos to act sexual towards the team. Team Sinister and Mark Sarian in particular hated this to the point of refusing to join in on the games and trying to refuse to do any interviews at all, concentrating on the competition only, which many teams preferred to do because the competition side of things was far better. Even the show's creators clashed with the teams, which made an unhappy atmosphere. In particular, Trey Roachski was noted to have branded anyone who went on Robot Wars or Robotica or any other competition as traitors. One team in particular that suffered Trey Roachski's wrath was Team Raptor. Team Raptor and Trey would clash constantly before reaching boiling point when Team Raptor lent Tripolta Raptor to be used in a Super Bowl commercial, which led to Trey banning Tripolta from the competition. With all this in mind, BattleBots was hanging by the thread, quite literally. Comedy Central wanted an excuse to get rid of BattleBots once and for all, and in Season 5.0 they got their wish when, during the Rumble, Nightmare's Tuff flew off and went outside the arena, almost hurting or killing audience members. This health and safety violation was the final nail in BattleBots' coffin. Meanwhile, Robot Wars enjoyed more success with other international competitions such as 2 Dutch seasons and a German series, as well as the before-mentioned US seasons. There was even going to be a 3rd season of Extreme Warriors, but that never came to be, sadly. On the UK scene, it enjoyed mass amounts of merchandise and positive ratings, meant it outlasted all of its other competitors in BattleBots and Robotica and any other robot combat show. Of course, Robot Wars would meet its end in 2004 after a disastrous move to Channel 5 combined with poor advertising and poor ratings for its 7th Wars. As many of you already know, both Robot Wars and BattleBots would return in the mid-2010s, and in a rather ironic twist, BattleBots became a huge success, and is still a huge success to this day, while Robot Wars flopped hard due to its low ratings, odd creative decisions that people complained about, and once again a TV corporation sabotaging its chances before it could even shine. In many ways, the 2 reboots shows us that BattleBots was a show that desperately needed the changes and fixes in order to become a success, which it did, whereas Robot Wars didn't really need the changes and ended up having some plus some, and as a result failed, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or in BattleBots' case, if it is completely broken, definitely fix it and make it better. The MTV pilot may have been a small competition and only a tiny part of Robot Wars' history, yet its conception is one that had a massive impact on both Robot Wars and BattleBots in general. There is currently no footage of the pilot other than a few images from the teams who fought and the accounts from Gearheads, a book which I used for this video and totally recommend if you're a fan of robot combat. Whilst Mech Plus does exist, it is unlikely that the MTV pilot will be shown, especially as they promised qualifier battles as well as behind the scenes footage and still haven't published them, and they are missing several Robot Wars media such as the First Great War, and even the international shows are not present, so I hold very little hope for them. That said, the MTV pilot is a mystery filled with interesting stuff, as well as controversy, and its impact on Robot Wars and BattleBots is certainly fascinating in the long run and is something that's not to be missed. It makes you wonder what would have happened if the pilot was a success and the US Robot Wars series was created. Would BattleBots have been defeated earlier on, or would BattleBots still stay on and self-implode just like it did in real life? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? It is quite shocking, but also at the same time quite fascinating just how toxic things were between Robot Wars and BattleBots. It was certainly a turbulent history to say the very least. Luckily, things are far better these days and relations are far more improved. I hope you enjoyed this video about the MTV pilot, and who knows, maybe one day it might resurface online, maybe some MTV executive might randomly decide to show it to the public, who knows. It's up in the air at this moment in time, and maybe we will never see a glimpse of this pilot, but from the accounts what we do know, it doesn't seem like it was going to be that exciting, to be fair, although it would have been interesting to see more actually in the Robot Wars arena, whereas it was expelled during the First World Championship due to being considered too unsafe. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.